Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, March 28th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 158 days. The game against Michigan in 242 days. We are inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center right now. Just got a chance to watch the Buckeyes in their 6th spring practice of the year. There are 15, of course, during the year, which means Thursday will be as close to halfway as we get, and then, well, unless you count Saturday when we'll be here as well, and halfway through the student appreciation practice, we can all appreciate that they are halfway through spring ball. So I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman, and we are at the point now, Tony, of the spring where it's no longer too early to say on some of this stuff. Yeah. It feels like you're getting more answers when we talk to the coaches. It's not, well, we've had 2 practices. Oh, we haven't put pads on yet. Okay, you're starting to get answers. And you're also at the point of spring ball where you're starting to be able to track changes, I guess, from week 1. Okay, here's where these guys were. Here's how they're lining up. Here's who was with this position group. And now we're far enough along that you're starting to maybe see some changes, see some, guys who may be moving up, moving down, all around.
Yeah, interestingly, they were running some interception drills, or interception return drills, with all 11 defenders. So it gave us a really good look at the first 3 teams on defense. So that was good. But it was basically the same 3 that we've seen, which tells us, we think that, so far, things have gone, I guess, as expected, and that nobody necessarily has made a jump in terms of going from one team to the other. Although on Saturday, everybody's working with the 1s and the 2s, including everybody. We all think Mike Hall is. We think of him as a starter. Like, he's with the 2s as much as he is with the 1s, and it is what it is. But I think right now, things are being confirmed, as you said, But as like Ryan Day and others have said, it's the 10 through 15 is really where you may see some jumps, because the newcomers, the young guys, the guys, the second-year guys that really take a step forward. For some guys, this is their first spring, and so then those last 5 practices where they've got stuff installed, and then they're really competing. That's when guys can really start to either catch up or separate.
And you're already starting to see some of the young guys look a little bit like, okay, they remember how to put their hands to catch the football, and they remember where to line up and that kind of stuff. You're seeing guys start to maybe sort of figure that out, and there are position groups where that's more true and less true, just because there's there is more that goes into being an offensive lineman at Ohio State than maybe being a wide receiver at Ohio State. The wide receivers tend to get there a little faster than the linemen, for example. But you're starting to see some of those young guys. We talked about Gabe Powers. Gabe Powers is someone that kind of jumped out to you on Saturday when you were watching the scrimmage then, and you saw something interesting after practice with him.
Yeah.
That does it mean anything? We don't know. But it happens, so maybe.
Yeah, and this is the fun thing about being at a practice, the stuff that goes on after it as well, because you're trying to make sense of anything and everything. But a group I assume it was a leadership council, if that's the exact term, but they were meeting with Day, all of the leaders, all of the older guys, last year's captains, everybody you would expect to see there. And then as they break apart, I see number 36, Gabe Powers, in there as well. A sophomore linebacker, redshirt freshman linebacker, who, you certainly, because I was looking with our buddy Dan Hope, 11 Warriors, are like, just looking for somebody who doesn't belong, because that's when so this guy has stepped up. That's basically what you're looking for. And so you see 36 in white, and you're like, well, that's interesting. And then I asked Jim Knowles about him later, and he said he's obviously getting better, but I think more importantly, he's earning the respect of his teammates, and the accountability is there in practice. And on Saturday, I saw him break up three passes in red zone, and he may have taken 8 snaps, and he had a PBU in 3 of them. And so when you see guys that step up on the play, and then boy, they're with a bunch of veterans right now. It may mean nothing. But it might mean something.
And this is a time of year when we do a lot of reading of the tea leaves. Yeah. And sometimes it means something, and sometimes it doesn't mean anything. But you're just sort of looking for, when they're talking about players at a position group, who do they talk about first? When they're, when you ask a player something, there's a way that coaches can say, he's nowhere near being ready to play without saying that. There's phrases that we'll hear and kind of go, okay, so push him down the list of people to worry about this fall. And then you'll hear them talk a different way about someone. It's like, okay, because they're not ever going to come out and just hand you a depth chart. There's a lot of this that's a little bit of creative interpretation and what do you notice, and just the little stuff that sometimes can be some of the big stuff. And so that was a good example of that. Let's stay on the theme of second-year linebackers. CJ Hicks, you got a chance to talk to Jim Knowles a little bit about him. He sounds like he is maybe getting a little bit of a different role.
Yeah, he could factor in as in that jack role along with Mitchell Melton, likely behind Mitchell Melton, as you need a depth chart at that position. But a guy who has supreme athleticism, and you need to find ways to use him. You don't want, you sign a 5-star linebacker. Do you want to wait until his third year before he's finally really out there? And he's going to be the backup at will behind Steel Chambers, so how much can you get out there? But as Jim Knowles said, these second team guys need to be really, really good on second team to show that they should play, because it's just because you're a second teamer, that doesn't mean you're ready to be a first teamer. So you have to show that you are the best second teamer. You are one of the best second teamers. You are giving the other second team problems. Then it's like, okay, you could probably give a first teamer a problem if you're consistently doing that. And so, we'll see where he is. One of the last plays on the scrimmage on Saturday was a play near the goal line, and he came in and blasted the running back, and Kyle McCord kept the ball and ran in for what he thought was a winning touchdown. But CJ got right through there untouched, right between, I think, the guard and the tackle, the A-gap there, and just destroyed the running back to no avail, but still impressive.
Yeah, and this is going to be sort of along the lines of, we're sort of interpreting things, we're learning about things, but you had talked to Jim Knowles about CJ Hicks as a jack before, and he had kind of said back in January, I don't think that's, and then now that's something that's happening. But it sort of made sense. Something else that sort of made sense this spring was they're not really working the jack at all. And the sort of stated reason a couple weeks ago was, well, we got to work on the 4-down stuff. But we had sort of openly wondered on this show, like, hey, Mitchell Melton isn't there. Mitchell Melton is also probably the first guy to be running at the jack position, and he's out for the spring. He'll be back for the summer, but he's out for the spring. So is that maybe part of the reason why they're not running the jack this spring? And they never said that. We kind of wondered. It kind of made sense. And then Jim Knowles on Tuesday said, yeah, it's partly because Mitchell Melton's not there. I was like, okay, thank you. We appreciate your forthrightness and honesty in all matters. So yeah, so there's just, again, this is like a little bit of tea leaf reading. This is a little more explicit. Okay, yeah, Mitchell Melton is probably going to be the first string jack this fall. CJ Hicks probably maybe second, something like that. But that's sort of where that jack position stands right now. Knowles was also asked about the jack position in terms of, is this something that you have to have? It's a non-negotiable that you will have to have a jack position here, or is this something that is maybe a little bit of a function of you've coached at Duke before, you've coached at Oklahoma State before, you maybe don't have the assembly line of 270-pound, quick defensive ends that you have at Ohio State. So you got to kind of make do with what you got, and you get creative. And he said, nothing is non-negotiable. Like if they don't have a guy to fill that role, or the defense is better in a different way, then that he's not going to be like, well, no, sorry, it's my defense, and I want to have a jack, and I don't care what you say. So that was, I think, also interesting to me. On the other side of the ball, did you have anything else on?
Well, I just think, because I wrote about this a couple weeks ago with the jack position, and it would always be, previously for Jim Knowles, it would be some hybrid, like a misfit toy that didn't belong in a running back room or a linebacker room. So it's like, okay, we'll try this. But at Ohio State, you don't recruit misfit toys. You recruit, like supercars, basically, and at each position, with this is your designated job, this is what we've brought you here for. And what Knowles is looking for is like a demolition derby car, Tom. And I'm going to assume, like, you didn't grow up around the demo derby families like I did. But when you grow up in that life, you don't have to go looking far for cars. They're just in the yard, And it's like, yeah, you go, like at Oklahoma State, you go into the running back room, or you go into the whatever room. At Ohio State, you're like, these are not in our garage. We're going to have to go, like, send out somebody, from wherever to go find us a beater. And so, yeah, like at this point at Ohio State, do they then recruit for that? Knowles talked about that before, like recruiting for that. He's like, since we have this position and maybe nobody else does like they do, they should be able to get the very best in the nation at that position. But is that just some 3-star beater who, just finds the right spot for himself?
I'm going to show that I do have some Demolition Derby knowledge and ask, in the Demolition Derby analogy, are the players all running backwards so that they don't hit their fronts?
There is a lot of that. And also, I don't respect the station wagon demo derby people. I'll just say that out loud. Because, at one point, I think in Henry County, and not to get off on a huge tangent, I think the station wagons got outlawed just because.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's not fair.
No, that's definitely not. Get one of those old country Squires or old Chevy Caprice Classic. Yes, that's
family truckster, undefeated.
Yeah, undefeated.
It's like, you're not really supposed to be, you shouldn't be traveling with this car. It's like a one-off,
You think you hate watching it right now. Wait till they drive it. So let's switch gears to
Tom,
see, that's a car term. See that? Let's switch gears to the offense. We got to talk to Brian Hartline, and you got to talk to Brian Hartline about a subject I'm sure you're going to enjoy gloating about a little bit. Carnell Tate, the first player, the first true freshman this spring to lose his black stripe. You picked him after another pick, so obviously you didn't really truly believe in him, but he did lose his black stripe on Saturday after that scrimmage. This is crazy early for a true freshman to lose his black stripe. What did Brian Hartline say went into all that?
Just he's done everything the right way. Everything. I think the first thing he mentioned was straight A's, and ever since he's got here, he's been the professional college student. And then, even before getting to Ohio State, they're working together. They're doing what they need to do, and so you hit the ground running. Workout's been great. So like everything that you could possibly want any incoming freshman to do, he has done, and also done it well. Like, yes, B's would be fine. Mm-hmm. He's gotten A's. He's already with the 2s. Noah Rogers is already with the 2s as well. So, like, these guys are making moves and playing well and doing everything they're asked and being complete guys. Carnell Tate being a complete guy because, as Brian Hartline said, you can't start just being like a one-trick pony. If you're going to play here, you're going to play a lot. You have to do everything. That's blocking. That's understanding space and just your routes and then catching the ball. So many different things, and he's advanced. And he said, I would expect maybe him to be where he is now in the summer, but he's here now, and not. I asked him if he was surprised, and it's not necessarily surprised. Maybe some surprise, but more just pleased.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's someone. I mean, it is surprising though, because you look at the history of wide receivers who have gotten that black stripe off that early. It is good company you're in. I mean, you were talking about said Jackson Smith and Jigba in 2020. You don't really know what practice it was because it was the weird year. Yeah. But it is a very small class of people who have lost the black stripe that early.
Austin Mack was one. Garrett Wilson was another. But everybody else was, I think, in April, and he's doing it on like March 25th or something like that.
Yeah, that is, you can go through and look at the history of guys losing their black stripe first, and it's like sometimes they turn into superstars, sometimes it's just okay, sometimes it's injuries and they never, it doesn't pan out. But it is the guys who lose it in the incredibly early. It's like people who make an all-star team in baseball at as teenagers. Virtually all of them turn into Hall of Fame type players, just because it's such a small number of guys who can do your Bryce Harpers and your Mike Trouts and your Dwight Goodens and the guys who really to be able to do something at that level that early is a meaningful data point. So not a big surprise. I think we were both pretty high on Carnell Tate even before that, but that's
someone who was higher.
Someone that's Noah Rogers.
I went alphabetical.
Anyway. So too bad it wasn't my first name, otherwise you would look so silly. So that's the some of the young wide receivers. Brian Hartline did say that it feels like he's more confident in the guys behind the guys. You're short a couple wide receivers this spring. No Emeka Egbuka, no Julian Fleming. They're here. They're just not practicing full go. You have got Marvin Harrison out there. You're obviously feeling pretty good about that. But it feels like, and it sounds like, based on what he said today, he's feeling pretty good about the next line of guys there, more so than he did last year.
Yeah, talking about it feels like 6 or 7 in a rotation he could go, 6, 7 deep to play this year right now. But feels better. The 4, 5, 6 are better than they were last year. And you would expect that. And now who is that 6? I think 4 or 5 we're talking Xavier Johnson and Jaden Ballard in whatever order. And really with Jaden Ballard, he's been the talk, but the guys behind him, it's interesting to see if those freshmen can get in there. And yes, you're 6 and 7 and you feel comfortable playing 6 or 7, but how many are you really going to play? And I do think they'll play more this year, but will it be beyond? Can they play beyond Jaden Ballard and Xavier Johnson is at 4 and 5? Can that 6 and 7 get in there?
And there's a lot of time to go. This was practice 6 from the spring, so still 9 more to go. You're not quite to the halfway point of the spring yet, but if you're seeing young guys flash like that, that's a very positive sign. Because spring is an interesting kind, because it's always, every time a wide receiver makes a catch, it's because a corner gave up a play. So it's good news or it's bad news. This is just pretty objectively, this is good news for Ohio State that and wide receiver is not exactly the biggest position of need for this team, but Marvin Harrison, I don't want to spoil any surprises. Marvin Harrison probably not going to be here for the 2024 season. So, and you could have that true of Emeka Egbuka. You could have that true of Jaden Ballard. You could have that true of Julian Fleming. I mean, just about Xavier Johnson. I mean, you could theoretically lose your top 5 wide receivers. Wow. So having a good 6, number 7 at this point, that is a very important thing for this team next year, if not this year. So that is going to do it for this morning. We have a ton of coverage from this practice at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, by the time you watch this, I'm sure we'll have gone home and worked very hard and put up a notebook on practice.
No, I have to.
Good. See how I did that, and I made you do the work. That was good. Tony will have a note and quote book from interviews. We have all of the interviews with Jim Knowles and Brian Hartline on our YouTube channel. We've got a full photo gallery from practice already up, and we have an active thread on our message board as well for members on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com, talking all about practice, sharing some of the stuff we saw, some of the stuff we've learned, all that kind of fun stuff, and answering your questions. Tuesday, of course, also the Mark Givler all-day chat on our board, so that's always a fun thread, very active one as well. So if you want to be a part of all that fun, you should sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic team of insiders covering the team, covering recruiting, covering X's and O's. This is also in addition to being a very busy time for the team, it is also a very busy time for recruiting. Had Alex on yesterday's show. I'm sure we'll have another recruiting show later on this week, because there is a ton to talk about. Lots of visitors. There were more visitors in practice on Tuesday. There'll be more on Thursday, and then Saturday is a very, very big recruiting weekend for the Buckeyes as well. So make sure you check that all out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.